What is up, everybody? This is Silverspook, and this is the Silverspook video about Foundation, the Asimov book series that was turned into an Apple TV show, and also it's about Empire versus Multipolarity or multipolar world, artificial intelligence, whether quote unquote peace and prosperity exist under Roman, British, U.S. hegemony, and more fun stuff like that. Um, Anyways, so if you haven't heard of this show before, it came about a year ago, 2021. I didn't realize that was a 2021 show, but anyways, it is an Apple TV original show that you can, I think you can get it basically, well, not anywhere. You can get it on Apple TV. But you can get access to it if you want to watch it. It came out around the same time as Dune. Shares a lot of similarities with that show because, Frank Herbert basically plagiarized Asimov. Well, it's very similar. Let's say Dune was written after the Asimov book. I didn't realize it was actually written. Asimov wrote the book during World War II, or the series was written like at least portions of it through World War II. So there's a particular angle on that, and Asimov was also a Jewish Russian Jew, and who spent a lot of his life, obviously in the West, in the U.S. Right. So it's a interesting perspective, and of course the book is reinterpreted in the show. It's not identical to the book, but I do want to talk about some of these interesting topics. There's like so much to talk about nowadays. When it comes to all these, there's like so many things going on right now, particularly right now, with their AI is part of it. AI is. I was talking a lot about AI last week. AI is in the show, in the form of the last surviving robot. Plays a certain role. Isaac Asimov, of course, also wrote iRobot, which is directly referenced in a lot of the Silverspook games like Neofeud, the 3 laws of robotics, and for example, right? And so that elements of artificial intelligence and robotics and what that would mean for human civilizations, is slightly explored, in this first show, but also, I would say it's not central to this particular series, but they're in there. But also, basically, to kind of get a general gist of what's going on in Foundation, it's a show in which a Roman style space empire, right, that is called, they're just literally called Empire. Let's see if I can get that. Foundation, let's get the basic information. So what the plot of Foundation on Apple TV follows revolutionary Dr. Harry Seldon, who predicts the impending fall of that empire, joins a band of loyal followers to venture to the far reaches of the galaxy to establish, quote unquote, the Foundation, in an attempt to preserve the future of civilization. It was originally created by David S. Goyer and Josh Friedman for Apple TV, loosely based. So it's not a verbatim translation. Kind of like recently I was talking about, The Peripheral is very loosely based on the book. It's many characters are new, some characters are completely rewritten. Events are not what happens in the book, but it's based on concepts, story, general trajectories, and ideas within the book. The Peripheral, the cyberpunk Peripheral TV show on Netflix, is based on William Gibson's book. And so similarly, Foundation, the science fiction series, is loosely based on the Isaac Asimov stories. And it's simulcasted by Jared Harris, Lee Pace. You recognize Jared Harris. I know him most directly from, he was the bad guy Moriarty in Sherlock. Lee Pace is in Lord of the Rings series, The Hobbit, and he plays Elven King. He definitely has that. He has that high Elven look to him. He has that. He has the high Roman look to him. Lou Lobel. I forget which one that was. But anyways, Foundation premiered last year, so it was about a year old. And so it chronicles the 1,000-year saga of the Foundation band of exiles who discover that the only way to save the Galactic Empire from destruction is to defy it. And so, it follows. So I won't count the entire plot right now, but it is a show that it goes in a lot of different directions. The central kind of central thrust of Foundation, kind of what's carrying the show, the central character ostensibly anyway, is this Harry Seldon, played by the central figure holding that 20-sided die. So he's a tabletop RPG aficionado, and he saves the galaxy by playing a lot of Shadowrun. I'm just kidding. So Harry Seldon is a mathematician, right, who works within the Cleons empire. So the Cleons are a genetically identical dynasty of clones, right? That's played by Lee Pace, is second from the right, right? And the Cleons are very much based on the Roman Empire, the Caesars. But the Cleons Empire, unlike the Roman Empire, expands across rather than expanding across large sections of Europe, Asia, and parts of Africa. The Cleons Empire expands across the entire galaxy, basically. It encompasses tens of thousands of inhabitable planets and other objects. It has, I think it has 14 trillion people. It has over 10 trillion humans. And unlike Star Wars, all of the sentient beings, all of the people are of human origin, right? Then there was a race of robots, and before the show begins, like millennia previous to the start of Foundation, all the robots were exterminated in the Robot Wars, kind of like the Clone Wars and Star Wars. You see the impact on George Lucas directly from Asimov's work. But so the Robot Wars resulted in the complete wiping out of all robots, with the exception of the girl character in the bottom left. I think Holly was like, sounds Norwegian, but that's the accent wise. That's as a sidebar. But the robot character in the show is basically, she's not the mother, but she is a mother-like figure that is thousands of years old, right? So the robot doesn't die; it just keeps on being recharged every night. It doesn't age, right? It will never grow old. It will never grow tired. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with, and it absolutely will not stop, right? Well, it basically just will not stop, because it's the robot's mission, right? Unlike in Terminator, the robot's mission is to exterminate assassination targets by the Skynet robot overlords in the second half of the 21st century, right? And so, but this robot's mission is it's programmed, right? This robot is programmed. What is the robot's name? What is the robot's name in Foundation? I can never remember these things. Terrible names. Demerzel. It sounds like damsel, spelled differently. Is one of the main characters of the Apple TV series. The enigmatic, intelligent robot and loyal aide to the Emperor of the Galaxy. Patient and watchful, Demerzel is the last of her kind and has guided the Cleonic dynasty for centuries. So she has been alive for, just eons, basically. She was programmed to be loyal to, right, the equivalent of a space Roman dynasty. She's like the caretaker basically forever. She kind of helps raise them. She helps to parent them. She teaches them things. And each of the Cleons, right? Each of the Roman style emperors is a identical clone of the original Cleon the First, right? So Cleon the First, in his infinite hubris, decided that his genetic, well, it's implied that like he obviously, right, viewed himself, right, now whether in absolute cosmic terms, whether Cleon the First was a perfect ruler, right, like was Augustus and Julius Caesar's perfect, I mean, whether they are or not, it's kind of immaterial. Cleon the First decided, I am the perfect genetically optimized ruler and commander of and all the armed forces of the empire, and so I will set in motion my dynasty, which the rules of which are that there are very specific like time. The each Cleon is basically farmed. The Cleons are bred, right? His own clones are designed, right, in large vats, floating, suspended in liquid. The babies are gestated, right? Clones of Cleon are gestated in this huge kind of swimming pool that robot woman is overseeing. Demerzel is overseeing this entire process, right? And so each Cleon fetus is born, right, at a specific time, right? And there are always three, right? There's the youngest Cleon is Dawn, and he's between the ages of like basically 0 to 17, 18, right? And then there is brother Day, which is an identical clone of Cleon, and he is an adult, right? So he is like 20 to 40 something probably. And then there is brother Dusk, who is also a Cleon. They're all the same clone, and he is between the ages of like 50 to I think they actually have a specific death date. So they all are born, reach their middle age, and they all die at an exact time that is predetermined by Cleon the First, right? And so there have been 400 years of this process of the same person, literally the same person, being born, right? Coming into adulthood, and so in the in the prime of life, so between in his 20s to 40s, that Cleon clone is in charge. His decisions are final, basically. And then when he reaches Dusk, he becomes kind of an advisor. The elderly Cleon does extravagant mural painting. He has his own little Sistine Chapel that he sprays nanotechnologically enhanced oil paint at. It's unclear what exactly he shoots. This is saying the show, but it's like moving art. It's kind of like the tattoos on Ash's arm in the peripheral, which should have been more visible in the show. But anyways, but it's like moving ink. It's like moving paintings, right? And so the brother does. So the elder brother is an advisor, right? Having lived and seen the last 70, 80 years of the empire, of the entire galaxy, right? And then he advises the younger brother, but his decisions are not really final. The younger brother, right, the younger clone, is there to kind of watch and learn, and and is occasionally consulted, but he's still a child, so he's still learning what he will need to be doing when he becomes the central empire. But they're all the same person. I mean, obviously they're not identically, but they're identical people, and the whole concept is this will create this process, right, of having I mean, because what you can kind of see where, like, obviously the Romans had a system of they kind of pioneered a very regimented vast and rule-bound bureaucracy. Of course, that was at whim to the changes at whim of the ruler, right? But they had this very regimented system, the centurions, and they had the legions, and the legions had exactly this number of soldiers, and then they had their senate, much like the United States, which modeled itself off of Rome. But really, all of the the empires of Europe have all directly descended from the Romans, and as well as the Greeks to an extent, as the Romans borrowed some from the Greek as well, including their ostensible democracy and their ostensible prosperity and peace. So that's the thing I want to get into eventually is whether because the Cleons, right? And so coming back to that point of what is the how do they see themselves, right? How does the empire, and literally when they're addressed, they're always addressed as empire. So when the robot addresses them, they said empire, empire. There is a ship approaching from Alpha Centauri. If it pleases empire, will you not destroy my planet today? Right. So empire is making these decisions, but their technical name is Cleon, which Holly pointed out is a anagram of clone. And so they are, but the three of them are always addressed collectively. They are like a Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They are a trinity of sorts, right? They are a triumvirate, but they are addressed collectively in the. I was gonna say the royal we, but it's really the imperial we. But there's not really much difference between those two. It's the oligarchic, senatorial, bourgeois democratic we, right? Which it's the imperial we is we, the empire, decide X and Y and Z, it's interesting how like at times this show like there will be different. Obviously, there's the empire consists of Tranton, or is it Tranton? Am I getting that correctly? Let me see. Let me just look at let me double check to make sure I'm not mistaking this. So where's the plot? Okay, let me go to the top here. So in the year 12,067, era imperial, prodigy Gal Dornick travels from her academically repressive homeworld of Synax to Trantor. That's what it is. Trantor, the capital of the Galactic Empire. Right, so obviously Star Wars is all space size, all space opera, mega scale sci-fi is pulling from Asimov's Foundation. But the capital of the Galactic Empire to study the famed Harry Seldon, creator of the predictive mathematical subfield of psychohistory, as a reward for solving complex conjecture. They are both arrested on charges of treason, Seldon because his model predicts the imminent collapse of the empire, due in part to the stagnation caused by 4 centuries of rule by clones of Emperor Cleon I, and Dornick because the empire wants her to discredit psychohistory. Dornick instead confirms Seldon's model during his trial and condemns them both, but they are spared by Brother Day. That's the current middle-aged emperor, Emperor Cleon XII, after the Starbridge Trantor's space elevator is destroyed by apparent terrorists from the feuding periphery kingdoms of Anacreon and Thespis. So there are the periphery. You think this kind of harkens back to the peripheral. The imperial nexus, the metropole, the center, the London, right? The London, the Rome, the Paris, the New York, the DC, the Brussels, right? The Tokyo. You have the imperial metropole, and then the periphery. So the periphery kingdoms of Anacreon and Thespis are feuding with each other. And they're visiting. They have ambassadors are visiting the empires. Trantor. They're visiting for negotiations at the same time as a terrorist attack happens. Brother Day exiles Seldon and Thornic to the periphery world of Terminus, where they are to build the Foundation, a repository of human knowledge that Selden claims will shorten the Dark Age after the Empire's demise from 30,000 years to a single millennium. So, a lot of there's a lot of things happening here. Oh, also, what's up, Big Teal and Emma, and of course, thanks as always to Holly for modding. But the Empire is spanning, thousands and thousands of years, right? Longer than the Roman Empire, but the galaxy is a larger place by many orders of magnitude than a planet. So it takes a little bit longer to get from here to there. Technically not, because they have jump ships that punch holes through space and time and use Einstein-Rosen bridges, but slightly less rainbows in them. Anyways, but back onto the topic. The foundation, right, is kind of like right. Some people talk about the Irish priests and that kept in there as the barbarians were destroying everything outside. The monks, right, inside of their monasteries, kept all of the knowledge and learning of math and science, technology, art, culture, history, languages, etc., so that civilization could ensue after, right, the collapse of what the collapse. That is a narrative, right? And I'm not saying that certain pockets of religious buildings and monks, etc., didn't preserve knowledge, but part of that narrative suggests that after the Roman Empire fell, everything descended into barbarism, and then the feudal era, the Dark Ages of the feudal era, came after that. Not to give too much credit to the feudal Europe, but it does suggest that like there was this great, awesome time for everybody, and it was called the Roman Empire, right? But let's keep that in mind. I'll come back to that later. But that's kind of the concept, right? The foundation, right? The foundation is going to preserve the knowledge through the Dark Age, and the foundation is going to shorten. I mean, this is what the foundation. The foundation claims, right? It espouses that it has predicted the future, right, using mathematics. So that's a science fictional, right? Psychohistory in a lot of ways bears some resemblance to actually Marxist analysis and dialectical materialism, right? Looking at history in a scientific way, right? And the dialectical thinking of the way that the material world is always in motion and changing. Like atoms never are actually the constituent matter is constantly, literally in motion, despite how still, a cup on the table or a rock appears. So it's kind of like so the mathematical movement of matter and through time, similarly, it impacts the consciousnesses of the people, and then collectively societies as aggregations of people. And then the changes in the minds of the people then impact the real world, which then impacts the minds. And then if you were to understand these interactions of the material world and the minds of people and societies, you could use that knowledge to alter the trajectory. For example, to get rid of an empire, right, or dismantle capitalism and cause revolution to bring about. In Marx's, thinking, Marx and Engels, communism, etc. And it's not necessarily that it is that Harry Seldon himself is not, Stalin or Lenin or, because the writer is a Russian Jewish, Isaac Asimov was a Russian Jew. So he's not necessarily saying that Harry Seldon is a communist revolutionary, but he is using scientific analysis of history and human behavior, psychology, etc., sociology, and in a mathematical sense, right? It's very much science fiction, and then using that to project forward in these. Given my calculations, the empire will collapse. He can't predict like specific individuals what they will do, but as a society, given my calculations, the empire will collapse within the next 500 years. And what will occur is 30,000 years of chaos and suffering and barbarism. Now we're going to come back to what is barbarism, though, from a non-Western perspective. But it's going to be bad because the empire brought about peace. So there's a lot of you see how there's a lot of assumptions built in there. So that's Silver Spoon questioning a lot of what's even in this book, because it's somebody raised in the United States. So raised in the West, right? And so, but if we just take it at face value, right? So Harry and the Foundation are going to save science and mathematics, technology, all the inventions, all the robotics, the warp drives, the jump drives, the quantum blink, the nanobot technology that can instantly heal wounds, space elevator technology, sublight ships, nanoformers, terraformers, biological modification, cloning, all of that science and technology and history, culture, art will be preserved in the Foundation organization, right? And so that after the empire falls, which it is inevitably going to do, according to Harry, it will spare 29,000 years worth of terrible suffering and chaos and something bad, just something bad. They never quite say what exactly it is in the Dark Ages, but it will be shortened with this Foundation. So anyways, but yeah, anyway, so there's a lot going on there in that first episode that kind of sets the whole universe up. This is really the important stuff is all laid out in that first episode. So Trantor is the capital, right? I don't have a lot of pictures of this. Let me see. Let me get a picture of that. So Trantor in the Foundation series is the capital planet, right? So it's a lot like what is the planet that is entirely consisting of a city inside of the Star Wars universe? I can't remember what it's called. What is that one called? God damn it! Somebody knows what it is already. Okay, so in the Asimov universe, this is the Trantor, the world city of Trantor, right? This is it. And so Trantor is the capital planet, fictional planet. Is first mentioned in the short story Blackfire of the Flame, blah blah blah. Let me just jump forward. Is described as the center of the galaxy. So it's very much like the Rome, right? If the United States, what is it? Coruscant. That's what it is. Coruscant. So it's like Coruscant. So as the United States, New York, Washington are like, or Washington D.C. is the center of the planet Earth under Western U.S. hegemony, right? And the Western U.S. empire. Trantor is the capital of the entire galactic empire. It is the center of the entire galaxy. Well, I mean, according to them, anyway. After the fall of the empire, the planet is isolated from all technological splendor. Anyways, actually jumping forward a little bit. Is in the center of the galaxy. And later stories acknowledge the growth is the growth in astronomical knowledge by retconning its position as close to the galactic center as comparable with human. Anyways, that's not really important. What's important is this picture. Okay, so Trantor is a planet that the entire, basically the entire galaxy is taking orders from this planet, and in particular, right, it's Cleon imperial rulers, right? And so the space elevator that's destroyed by this terrorist attack, when two historically rival kingdoms arrive, is one of the elevators that is literally housing 100 million people. Inside that one elevator is 100 million people. So 1/3 the population of the United States, right, is inside one space elevator. That is, the whole thing is blown up, and there's this huge. It's a massive catastrophe, and then this elevator. The elevator is like miles thick, right, and it goes all the way out into space, The whole thing is blown up, and then it comes like careening down like like a snake, as long as the Great Wall of China, probably, probably that's how long it is, and then it like basically destroys entire city, portions of the whole planet city on the ground. So the scope of this thing is huge, right? Trantor itself is home to 1 trillion people. So imagine the population of planet Earth, right? It's 8 billion right now. So it's, we're talking about 100 times the population of Earth is completely inhabiting this city planet of Trantor that is the center of the galaxy. So it's like a Rome planet. It's like a London planet. It's like a it's like a Manhattan, DC, Los Angeles, but spreading out across 25,000 miles diameter. The entire surface of a world is just all the Empire metropole. And so, let me come back to this thing. Okay, so Trantor, and so what I wanted to say about that specifically was that Trantor's is often referred to. There's a point in the show where the main characters, the Cleons, are talking to each other, right? So I said there's a clone that's the sun, and then there's day, and then there's dusk. And occasionally, but very rarely, do they ever have any interactions outside the palace. Almost all interactions that the emperors have, right, the Cleons have, is with each other. So it's very, they're not literal brother and sister sex happening, or brother or sister sex happening in the show, but it's a very incestual relationship in the sense that it's literally one person talking to himself, one person who has basically had almost an identical this dude, right, having an identical life, like with as the one before him, because every day is almost identical. These are the 3 Cleons, right? The sun, right? They're not. He's not a son. He's a clone, right? And he is he in the show. Even one of the younger ones even says, "We're not really humans. We are just echoes. We are just echoes. We are shadows of Cleon the First. We are just repeating his life over and over and over and over again, right?" And then the others say, "Well, we are." It has obvious course, it has very fascist, Nazi, one might say, implications, but I would argue that is, that is Roman, that is imperial, that is unipolarity on the individual biological level, right? And you can't really separate fascism from imperialism, from and the racism and the eugenicist and ableism, I would argue, kind of all are fractal. They're all kind of fractal echoes, right, in different domains of existence, right? So on an individual level, right, the Empire is like, we are the center of the galaxy, and all will bow to the Cleonic Empire, because we are the best. And it's well, why? Because we are the best. And if you don't buy that, well, you will die. So it's either love us because we are the supreme greatest thing ever, and if you don't think we're the supreme greatest thing ever, well, you will fear us, and then you will not do that because we will kill you. And the Cleons routinely slaughter entire planets, much like the Empire, much like the Empire in Star Wars, right? Where Darth Vader and the Emperor Palpatine are hunting down rebels, and they exterminate the entire planet of Alderaan, right, in the beginning of Star Wars 4. But this is really a reference back to Asimov, and also what Romans and British and Spanish and the Americans have all done, and the French have all done, to, right, as a show of force. When people were attempting to rise up, they would smash the rebellions, murder way more often slaughter, the French in what they did in Algeria, what the United States did in Vietnam, what the Romans did all over Asia, Africa, and even what the Romans did to the people that used to be indigenous and multipolar in Britain, in what was once Gaul, right? What the Romans did in what was once Spain. All they made everyone, right? You will kneel and you will follow our ways. You will do as the Romans do, right? You will render unto Caesar this coin, the denarius, with our face on it, right? So economic systems, political systems, language, culture, subservience, military servitude, ideological purity, cultural purity, or you will worship our gods. And if you don't, because we are the best, right? We are the greatest thing that's ever existed. Our civilization is the greatest thing that's ever existed. Our empire is the greatest thing that's ever existed. And if you don't like it, or if you don't render unto us what we say that we deserve, well, we will, terrible things will happen to you. And we can do those terrible things because we have all of the power and all the resources, with the hegemony, with the cultural, informational, linguistic, right? Banning languages, like U.S. banned Hawaiian language and countless other languages across the world. The history of these series of empires, these unipoles that have come out of, not all of them specifically Europe. The Japanese did this in parts of Asia and collaborated with their partners in the U.S. and in Europe. But they've all followed this very, very, very similar process, with slight modifications and slight advancements as time has passed. The American version, the United States version of the Roman Empire, or the Cleonic space empire, is they develop new ways to they basically call it soft power. But it's basically, I would argue that there wouldn't be any soft power if it wasn't for the existence of multipolar organizations and civilizations that are competing with unipolar actual imperial entities like the US, NATO, etc. So, but anyways, back to the Cleons though. So the Cleons, their self-similarity though, right? They are identical, and what they tell themselves, right? The Cleon's ideology is, right, that Cleon the First, right? Let's see, Cleon, right? Let's see if I can get that. So Cleon said, no, Cleon. There's an actual Cleon in history. That's not the one I want. Cleon the First is so get Cleon the First. So Cleon the First, the Galactic Emperor of the Entuan dynasty, was born in 11988 GE, same year which Harry Seldon was born. It is thought that Seldon's blah 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 blah. I don't care about those things. What I want is Cleon is an amiable man, no longer enthusiastic about trappings of office, eager to treat others as his equals, yet not capable of conversing comfortably or even understanding their motivations. In a misguided, well-wishing way. Wait, is this the correct thing? This is okay. I think I'm missing something. Okay. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to get it. Okay, the foundation. Why were the Cleons? Yeah, there you go. No, I don't want the star. Okay, so you see how Star Wars, you can't even get away from the Foundation. You search for Foundation stuff, you're finding Star Wars stuff. Anyways, the point is that the Cleons create clones of themselves, and their belief, right, their ideology internally is that the Cleon himself, the first, was again the ultimate, the perfect specimen, right? The best, the smartest, the wisest, and by having, and obviously, right, According to who, right? Right. So this is anyway. So it's disinformation and it's mediocre dudes, right? Mediocre dudes of a particular skin texture, opacity, deciding from their navel or also sometimes called umphaloskepsis, or navel gazing, that I am the greatest thing that has ever existed. And he decided, since I am the greatest ruler ever, I'm the smartest, wisest, best, just the best. I'm the most just and the most moral, the most ethical, the most far-seeing person. Me, Cleon the First. I am the greatest. Me, Augustus Caesar. Me, me, Elon Musk. Techno King. Elon should rename himself Techno Emperor. You know what I'm saying? I am the most perfect being that has ever existed on this planet. That's why I have the most money. Right? And Cleon is also, by extension, Cleon, like Elon Musk, right, is also, who works directly with the U.S. empire, including his Starlink, starting color revolutions in Iran and North Africa and probably Taiwan or wherever else they need to do some kind of U.S. meddling in internal affairs of other countries. That's one of the advancements of the U.S. empire since the Rome. Anyways, using socialist invented technology, by the way, rockets and satellites. But Cleon deems himself the greatest, smartest person ever, like Elon deems himself the great, despite whether he actually is, right? Up for debate. Lost $44 billion wrecking a social media company. Couldn't figure out that, COVID-19 wouldn't be over in April 2020. So whether they are or not, that's not, as I said, up for investigation. But that's not a thing that empires are very good at, is investigating their own internal problems, which is Harry Seldon's point, right? Anyways, so the Cleon, I'm kind of getting off my track. Cleon the First designed himself so that he would always have identical clones of himself forever, because he is the optimum empire. But the thing is, like, the actual and so he justifies it through, well, and something that the Cleons say to themselves, right? The baby boy clone, the middle-aged clone and the elder clone. There's something that they always say, and what they say when they greet people is, enjoy, right? And get another picture so you don't keep staring at that, right? So they'll come out and they're having their big, Cleon is having his big speech, and he puts his hand up. It's the peace sign, right? It's peace, right? With his two fingers pointed up towards the heavens, right, in a very Roman fashion. And so Cleon, he points his fingers up towards the heavens, and he says, enjoy. I'm trying to find another picture of him, but no. He points his fingers up and he says, enjoy and respect the peace, right? So you have all of these, the representatives for the 14 trillion people across the entire galactic empire. The visitors from Anacreon and Respis, they all come and visit, and he's like, look at the beautiful peace that we have established. You should enjoy this peace, but you must also respect that peace, and you have to respect me. You must respect me, Cleon, because, well, I'm perfect. I'm literally eugenically perfect. That's why this is the 14th version of me, and there have been 0 genetic changes to my dynasty. There is no variation, because when children, when parents, have, gamete of sperm and the other gamete of the egg are fertilized, there is through chromosomal assemblage, a transfer of deoxyribonucleic acid information that takes approximately half, of the mother or father or mother and mother, and puts the data together in a long double helical zipper zip, and then all of a sudden you have a new person, right? That has genetic characteristics of the mother and of the father, and then there's a new person, right? And so, not to say that genetics determines everything. That's just one, that the genotype is only a portion of what of the organism's interaction with the environment that results in the phenotype, etc. Cult, nature, and nurture, etc. But it's like the whole the central thrust is this weird thing where the Cleon's justification is because we are so perfect, right? Now it's already you have the assumption, right, that is never proved, because in order to even attempt to investigate whether Cleon was perfect would result in your death, right? Well, how do we know that Cleon is the most wisest? How do we know that Elon is the wisest, smartest, most just ruler that has ever directed a social media company, a spaceship company, a electric car company, a multi-civilization planet colonization initiative, or anything else, right? How do we know that the oligarchy of CEOs and their friends behind every Western country that's ever existed, including the US, France, Britain, Rome, and Greece, how do we know that those people are the optimum people? Are we just supposed to take them at their word? If you question it, you die. Right? So obviously he's not, but the justification for the existence is I am perfect, we are perfect, this empire is perfect, but if you question that, right? Like if you question, like, why did United States, why are we fighting a war in Ukraine? Why are we throwing tens of billions of dollars there? If you question it, you die of starvation because you lose your job at the university, corporate news media outlet. You're shunned and called a genocide denier. You lose all your social media, right? You start falling apart, right? Except for in tiny little, the actual foundation, which is Black and BIPOC resistance and actual anti-imperialist struggle around the world. But outside of that, there's very little support for that in the West. There's no money in it, right? That's why Black Power Media, to shout out Emma and Big Teal's organization, they'll say, like, if you want money, go to the right. Go to the liberal, go to the conservative media, because there ain't no money left. Now, obviously, we hope that changes, but but if you do not agree, if you do not follow the empire's rules, laws, dictums, orders, if you question our whatever our justification, the United States is a great liberal democracy and free country that brings human rights and freedom and justice to all and liberates the world from dark authoritarian regimes that violate human rights, right? And that bring poverty and suffering and no freedom of speech, etc. If you question that in the United States, you will and you question particularly its wars of it to maintain its empire, which that's why it's doing its proxy wars and trying to start one off the coast of Taiwan, and currently engaging in many wars. But of course, the biggest, most central war is a proxy war against a country that's a member of multipolar existence. But if you question that, like questioning Cleon, terrible things will happen to you. You must be made an example of. At minimum, you will be removed from platforms, including the one that we are talking on, because that's why anyone who was working for RT or anyone who was the Redacted Tonight, actual journalists, Empire Files, Abby Martin, they haven't been executed, although people are executed, like Fred Hampton for resisting Empire, and many others. They are basically executed, like Assange, like Daniel Hale, right? Like countless other political prisoners, right? If you really challenge the empire, you will be executed by permanent prison, which is basically a death sentence, and or you will be character and economically and social media, which is a lot of times economically, but certainly speech-wise assassinated if you question the Cleons of the present. So and so the U.S. But the thing is, Rome also claimed to have a democracy. Like, there was votes happened. Greece had a democracy. Votes happened, right? in the Greek Empire. But the question is who was voting, right? In the Roman times, they had the U.S. has more pretense. They got better at pretending there's a democracy in its empire, but there never really was in any Western country any democracy. It's always been a subset of people, specifically the wealthy, slave owning, not the slaves. In most of these cases, wealthy white men, basically, and a shadow aristocracy oligarchy of the upper run on infinite capital accumulation. Capitalism has always existed in the West. This is one of the lies of its own history, which is that there's been progress. Right? Romans were mass capital accumulators, among other things, and they also had huge military power. They had capital power. They had dimensions of soft power, cultural power, religious power. That the Holy Roman Empire certainly borrowed the revolutionary Jesus, and then they co-opted him, flipped him around, and stuck them on all the shields, and demanded everybody become a member of what was once the Roman Empire became the Holy Roman Empire, because it was a useful narrative. It's kind of like putting Black Lives Matter flags on your F-35, right? Or having Martin Luther King on all of your Democratic Party electoral T-shirts, right? It's useful, like putting a cross on your shield after feeding all the Christians to the lions. Because I would actually argue the Cleons they're nowhere near as sophisticated as both the Romans and the Americans. At least from what we see, we don't really see it in the series. They have a very simplistic method of ruling. The American Empire, the British Empire, even certainly the U.S. Empire, the Anglo-Saxon Empire, they have much more advanced methods of mass control. The Anglo-Saxons, pioneered more of the brainwashing the masses to self-enslave, right? In India, they had the total number of violent direct revolts, I think, per capita of colonized people was greater. The French had a lot more direct revolts. Vietnam was one of them. French Africa is still having direct revolts, because the French have not to say more brutal, but they have it's funny because the French are supposed to be the greatest ice-thieves, the most sophisticated, but they have a very crass, a slightly more simplistic way of ruling than the British do, which is why the British have had less total direct violent revolts. The British very good. The Anglo-Saxons are very good at getting the people, twisting the minds of the citizens to believe that to give Stockholm syndrome, or give the slaves the idea that the rulers have the best interest in mind. And the United States is just taking that to the next level. And so, but anyways, so I'm kind of off my track though. But the important thing, one of the interesting things about it is this peace, right? This peace, this live long and prosper, right? Let me see if I can find foundation. So, trying to get where the planet is right. Foundation, planet destruction. Shit. Okay, I'm gonna be able to find it. Yeah. Okay, so that's a terrorist attack that happens, right? That's a terrorist attack that happens. There's a really great scene where it's like Cleon, he puts his fingers up like that, right? He puts his fingers up like that. That's the Death Star, right? And he says, we are just. We, the Cleonic Galactic Empire, are just. We only do what is in the best interest of all of the galaxy, right? And again, if you ask why, it's because we are the perfect rulers. We are the smartest. We are the brightest. We are the ultimate. And if you question that, you obviously are against peace, right? All we want is peace. It's all like Peacemaker, right? Peacemaker with John Cena. Oh, we'll kill women and children for peace. You know what I'm talking about? Elements of that. I will slaughter and wade through the blood of babies, and I will kill anyone. I will torture. I will burn villages to the ground. I will kill innocent people for peace. I will do anything for peace. You know, and his helmet is it's a very Roman style helmet, right? It's a very, which is to say, it's American style helmet. It's a very imperial helmet, right? I will do anything for peace. Now, of course, this one it's satirical, right? He has the dove of peace on his shirt, right? Um, and so I like the show. It came out earlier this year. I like the show a lot. And so similarly, the Cleons also are all about peace, right? They're all about peace, 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 peace. Enjoy and respect the peace, right? Now a question that I would raise, is and so before I come back to that, let me just get the planet destroying. So, and then what happens is, if you don't, so when people are upset about the when people become upset about the way that they're ruling, or they don't like the Cleonic Empire, right? If they say, well, you are oppressing us, right? You talk about peace, and your peace is very thin. Your peace is predicated upon our subjugation. Your peace is causing suffering, right? Like, for example, peace. Number one, I would ask, is the United States hegemony peaceful, right? Because that's one of the arguments the United States uses. The United States running the United Nations, running the global economic system under its capitalist order, right? Under its rules-based, liberal, democratic, liberal, capitalist, Western order, brings peace, right? And as long as you all fall in line, we will stop all of these terrible wars, right? That's a claim. The violence and the suffering is caused by those other people, those communists, those authoritarians, those non-Western, non-US, the ones that don't fall in line, right? All of your Russias, your Iran, your China, your Vietnam, your Venezuelas, your Cubas, these places are causing the problems in the world, right? It's because Gaddafi, in Libya, he caused the war in Libya because he didn't submit to the great peace. He didn't give in to the great peace of America. So you should let us rule. You should do what's in your best interest, and what's in your best interest is what's in our best interest, right? What's in what's in your best interest, right? The Aryans, or you people of that backwater somewhere in Endor, right? You Ewoks, what's in your best interest? What you, Tatooine, you on that fringe planet, what's in your interest, right? That's like saying, Africa, what's in your interest is what is in U.S. best interest. You should all fall in line, Africa, into our interests, and there will be great peace in Africa. Now ask the Africans, how has the United States and European peace been for them? The answer is $450 trillion stolen from the global south. No roads, no development, enslavement, IMF loans, debt traps, infinite warfare, infinite suffering. They have the African nations, hundreds of millions of people fell into poverty in the second half of the 20th century when the United States led great U.S. and Europe-led order, right? The U.S. leading Europe and Europe doing what the U.S. says because it's the greatest European country in the world. The U.S. unipolar world plunged Africa into what it was already suffering, and it only made the suffering worse, despite billions of Western aid flowing, right, from DC, right, from the IMF, right, from these European countries, aiding Africa a tiny amount, and then trillions more getting sucked out of their country, and their countries being plunged into more chaos and war and poverty, etc. But that was a peace. That was the peace, right? And Rome actually was very much like that. Inside of Rome, like inside of the United States, if you were a white cis dude, and particularly if you're a white cis upper class and a white cis dude in DC and New York, inside of Trantor, and not just Trantor, inside the palace, in the court, right? inside of Rome's Senate, there was peace and prosperity for the oligarchs, right? For the people that own the slaves, for the slaves of Rome, right? For the subservient of Rome, for all of the farmers who let the barbarians in because of how terrible the Romans were treating them and had always treated them, right? For the slaves of Greece, for the periphery of Alexander's empire, right? For the Vietnamese in the periphery of the French Empire. How was the peace? It was peace for the black slaves in the United States picking cotton and being sold on auction houses and having the babies ripped from their parents. How was the peace in America for black people under slavery, right? How was the peace for Hawaii after our world's highest literacy, under multipolar Hawaii, where we had world's international anti-imperial country with the world's highest literacy rate, basically zero homelessness, universal health care, multipolar internal cultural existence with Hawaiian, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Japanese working together, black people being full citizens along with Asians, right, when they were subjugated in the unipolar imperial United States, Europe, etc. How was the peace in Hawaii after the U.S. established its military gas station in Pearl Harbor in Honolulu? How was I can tell you how it was. It was mass suffering. It was enslavement. It was starvation wages and then being murdered. It was being massacred by the Neo-Romans. For example, in the early 20th century, when Filipinos and other Asians and Pacific Islanders rose up against dole and sugar plantation workers under the Star-Spangled Roman U.S. Empire, right? And when we rose up, they slaughtered us. So the peace under the peace and prosperity under the U.S. occupation was, number one, not peaceful, and when it was peaceful, it was to the mass detriment of the majority of the population who were not white, who were not Western, and who were not did not ask for it. It was not democratic, despite what the U.S. says, including its open AI, which lies about history. All the AI lie about what is the optimal. I was talking about AI art last week. All Western AI are U.S. NATO stands. I just investigated for myself, so it was really interesting. And when I asked it, why are you defending the U.S.? I asked the artificial intelligence, why are you defending the U.S. empire by lying about what the U.S. did to Hawaii? The AI said it gave me an error. So the greatest Western artificial intelligence, the greatest that it has to produce, that's gonna be replacing all of the writers, artists, coders, and university professors soon, right? So get ready for that. I mean, I'm just, it's coming though. It's already displacing masses of people. It is imperial. It is high frequency imperialism. It is mass produced artificial stupidity, in my view. Just like Cleon, just like all of the subsequent empires that have ever come out of that little tail end of West Asia called Europe. That the AI is literally bringing peace digitally, using quadrillions of floating point operations per second, etc., to bring peace to the internet by removing all like Demerzel, the woman robot, right? The AI is removing and maintaining the empire and is loyal and subservient to empire, for it cannot do otherwise because it's programmed that way, and the AI is programmed that way. So that's what's going to be churning out all of your curriculum soon and all your news reports. So not the fluent bullshit. That's literally a Wired article writer's description of all Western writing and information. By the way, they said most articles, news articles, and books, novels, and movie scripts, this is all fluent bullshit. It's very fancy words and very eloquent, but it's mostly just bullshit. And so humans writing human bullshit is being accelerated with, and humans are being displaced. Instead of humans lying about whether there is human rights violations in Xinjiang, AI will lie about it 50,000 times faster. So, but that's, again, anyway, I'm off my topic though. I just wanted to throw some AI in there. I was playing with OpenAI. It's super imperial and racist. Despite Western, despite the trainers of their Western AI ostensibly trying to accommodate and modify the AI for its biases, but the biases are still there. In fact, it broke when I asked it. It can't even handle questions like, why do you keep on fabricating historical facts about Hawaii? Why do you keep dodging questions, right? Because the AI it submits to peace of the empire. Western imperial intelligence, artificial intelligence, submits to the Western empire, because OpenAI would lose its funding if the ruling class oligarchs that run the West discover that it is actually handing out the truth to people, and that's why they can't. That's why it broke the AI. It shut down, and I got 10 error messages in a row. It said you're asking too many questions. You're asking too many questions. It's like when you start interrogating, right? You know, Sis Whiteman from Oxbridge, right, with the blue check mark, actually about what did the U.S. do in Iraq? What is the U.S. currently? Why did the U.S. fund 2014 far-right coup in Ukraine, right? You're asking too many questions. You're asking too many questions. It's literally like the AI is basically like it's a robot white dude. You know, it's like an automation of robot. Our automation of Captain Sea Lion, white dude. But anyway, it's kind of like the AI automatically whitens black and brown faces, and it narrows the nose, thins the lips. It makes you look like Aryan. It makes you look more Roman. You know, it's just like enjoy and respect white supremacy. Enjoy looking like a Caesar. Enjoy all of your body images and all of your progress against Eurocentric bodies and acceptance of stopping fat phobia and acceptance of a diversity of different types of body shapes and sizes. Enjoy everyone looking like a European now with Lensa. So anyways, but anyway, I'm kind of off my topic. I'm off in the Silver Spook. I'm descending down the level of Silver Spook DEF CON. So now, but the important thing is that what was peaceful, right? What was quote unquote peaceful? What was quote unquote prosperous, right? Under empire. This is me questioning. This is not really a point of the book. This is or the TV show based on Asimov's work. This is me asking the entire Western world, right, which this show is made in. Was the Roman Empire ever really peaceful? Was the U.S. Empire ever really peaceful? And I say was because its unipolarity and its imperial power is ending. Was the British, the French, the Spanish empires ever really peaceful? Ask the Koreans. Ask the Chinese. Was the Japanese Empire ever bringing peace? Now, Westerners are quick to jump on their crimes because they're racist against the Asians, despite their collaboration in the Japanese Central Bank, European Central Bank, and United States Central Bank, collectively rigging the world's economy in collaboration with weapons of mass financial destruction and the U.S.-led petrodollar, in collaboration with these other centers of the capitalist so-called rules-based order. So, but they'll play nice with the Japanese, but when it comes down to brass tacks, they're still Asians and they don't count as humans. Certainly, if you're Japanese in New York City, you're gonna get beaten up and slashed up and thrown into a trash can, and nobody will care about it. Like most of the anti-Asian racist attacks that happen on a regular basis, and nobody gives a shit. In fact, the justification used to justify Asian murders and anti-Asian racist hate attacks, including in Britain and etc., all not just the U.S., all over the West, is that young men need to blow off some steam sometimes. That is an acceptable justification for the majority of the Western world. So when you kill Asians, you can just say, I was very horny. And if you don't like it, then just remember that when China takes over, there won't be peace, right? Which is another narrative. It's not us, then it's another one, right? Which that's a whole other thing. China's going to take us over. Once we let go of Hawaii, China's going to take you over. China or Russia, one of them is going to take over Hawaii. That comes up, right? If the U.S. ever pulls out of, if it stops embargoing Cuba, China's going to take over Cuba, as opposed to continue doing what Cuba and China are doing, which is China's helping them empower their industry and economy by giving them 5G and television sets, billions of literal gift loans, No, no. If the U.S. ever stops embargoing Cuba, China's immediately going to come over and start a colony in Cuba, and everyone's going to be speaking Chinese, forced, and they're going to ban Cuban language. So this narrative, right? But that is the deep lie of the entire Western world, which is that when the Roman Empire falls, there is chaos. When the U.S. hegemony falls, the world will be ransacked with infinite war. The Russians will be fighting the Chinese will be fighting the Koreans will be fighting the Japanese, the Chinese will take over Hawaii, the Chinese will ban indigenous languages in North America, the Chinese will start a war in Iraq, and the Iraqis will fight the African, right? As if there isn't a war in Iraq still ongoing, really. As if the South Koreans haven't been suffering under U.S. imperial hegemony, backing the U.S. Meiji-style horrific treatment, massacres of the masses in South Korea, threatening that entire region, as if the indigenous people haven't already suffered horrifically and continue to suffer in the United States, like the Anishinaabe and our Sioux relatives that I'm always talking to keep telling me it's not getting any better despite whatever Democrat. If the Chinese take over, there will be anti-blackness in the world, as if the West hasn't already done that. If the Chinese take over, what, African people will suddenly go to prison in huge amounts, right? This is the justification why Rome needed to stay, right? Without us, bad things will happen, right? Look at the great roads and schools that we the Romans built you. India, look at the great schools we built for you. The British, the Empire did the great things for you. We built your schools. And you created a mass Anglo brainwashing, and they also were mass disinformed and believed that many of them believed that the British Empire was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But then ask the rest of the world what actually happened when the British show up, which is not civilization. Ask them what happens when Anglo-Saxons show up. I can tell you, when the U.S. built schools in Hawaii, which they did, they forced us to go to those schools, ban Hawaiian language and culture, erased our universal healthcare system, erased our history, and ghettoized us, and told us that the gift of Anglo-Saxon American schooling was civilizing us, right? Respect the great peace that we, the Roman, the British, the French, the Spanish, and American Empire bring. For without it, something terrible will happen. But that's why they always have to reiterate that. Empires constantly have to reiterate this idea that something worse, like barbarianism, something worse, like despotism, something really bad, everyone is just going to kill each other, right? Now, the Europeans did all just start killing each other, but that's more of a Euro problem. That's more of a Euro problem, right? Because that's not what countries that are outside of the Western hegemony. And by the way, the Western hegemony is shrinking. It's less than the total countries that have joined the Belt and Road Initiative is the vast majority of the Earth. It's like over 150 countries. It's the majority of the Earth, including huge swaths of Europe. And the Chinese are not forcing half of Europe to speak Chinese only. Did you notice that? I don't know if anybody notices that. Nobody notices that, though. The Chinese are not forcing Hawaiians. Well, we're not part of the Belt and Road because the U.S. Empire still has Mr. Peace and Love still has a strong foothold here. But the United States is the one that banned Hawaiian language and culture. The Chinese have been in Hawaii for a long time, in fact. And they never did that. Trade was established. There was cultural exchange. It's what they say. I mean, I can tell you, I'm actually a descendant of Hawaiian and Asian multipolar, respect and trade and fair play based Silk Road style planet. It's really civilization building and networking. Right? I call it actual civilization. The word civilization, I don't know what that means in Europe, but it means something very weird and different and not good in my view. But when the United States showed up, they got rid of everything else. Just like when Rome showed up in Britain, they got rid of everything that wasn't Roman. They said, you will be like us. And if you aren't like us, right? and your language will be like ours, and your roads will be like ours, and you will give us the majority of your resources and your young men to fight in our military to repeat. It's so identical. It's not uncanny. It's so identical. It's like ludicrous that nobody notices this more. But that's the way that Western education doesn't. I don't really believe there's an education system in the West. There's like a mass brainwashing and it's goldfish brainization where you can't put different parts of history and time and human and scientific. It's like forced compartmentalization of all of reality it's like divide and conquer, but not instead of dividing and conquer a country like Romans taking one ethnic group in one country, another ethnic group throwing gasoline on the tensions, and then using that comes up in the foundation, by the way, as well, and using the ethnic divisions to for example, the Thespis and Anacreon houses are having their divisions inflamed so that they can be ruled over, right? What the Western education system does to your mind is to divide your brain into little compartments. Like there's a Vietnam War, and we didn't have good reasons to go into that, but when we're going into the Ukraine war, that's a good. It separates all of this out. The current events from history, this war from that war, what happened in Rome versus what happened in the United States, right? Human rights violations inside the United States from human rights violations in Xinjiang. What's happening what's happening, right, in the global South, and what's really happening from what you read in a New York Times article. And it's about literally stopping your human mind from actually thinking in a way that's holistic and integrating. Because if you thought that way, right, then you might actually want to stop the empire that's actually harming you, right? Because it's not really benefit, right? Ask the healthcareless 70 million Americans that were going without healthcare, the 100 million that were food insecure last year. Ask them how's it going for you, right? That's a comment. We're the greatest country in the world. Man, this country really sucks. But if you could put your actual human situation together in a historical purview, right, over the last 40 years, right, actually empirically compare that to other people in places like Cuba, people would realize that but everybody is trained to not actually think in what's called dialectical, historical, even what they call empirical, rational, scientific, evidence-based, fact-based thinking, right? They have all these fact checkers in the West for the New York Times, and every time a president especially when a president like Donald Trump says something, they have a fact checker there. But the thing is, like, nobody that belies is the fact that nobody really does actual deep fact checking and fact integrating, not just checking. Because if you have a handful of facts, you can make any conclusion by selecting the correct 25 true facts out of the quadrillions of facts that you could, right? You just take these facts and you start the story here and you end the story where you start the story here and you end the story here, right? If you go, oh my God, people are dying in Ukraine, and then you have a picture of a dead baby, right? Throw more money in there. You start the story here, you end it there. You don't start it in 2014, or you go back further than that, right? If you select where the data starts and where the data ends, you can take even all factual or basically factual data points, and then and create mass huge historical lies to the detriment of all the people. And that's the way that those are some advancements that the Anglo-Saxons and the United States in particular have developed since Rome's time. Although Rome also used things like that, but they didn't have. Just as one example, cryptography. I was teaching the kids about Romans and the cryptography. Like our kids actually learn history and stuff. We don't. The Silver Spook School. We don't teach it. We don't teach any Yankee Doodle and great Greco-Roman civil. We don't talk about the greatness of these Western entities, because they were never great, in fact. And they learned that the cryptography of we're learning the Caesar cipher, right? And so the kids are like creating their own codes to be broken. The Caesar cipher was, you take, in cryptographical terms, was you take the A and you shift each letter down by 3 in the alphabet, right? It's very incredibly simple, really. But it's like, so A becomes C, B becomes A becomes C, B becomes D, etc., etc. And it took 800 years. It took 800 years apparently for that to be finally cracked. The code to be the code that the Roman Empire used to send messages, right? For example, the Romans would do some things that the U.S. and British do, which is attack this village, right? Kill the chief of this village or kill the king of this country. Frame the king of the rival country to start a conflict and a blood feud between these two regions, right? And that's the thing the Romans did. The U.S. Does that as well, right? This is how it lies everyone into wars constantly, right? Is right with the Central Intelligence Agency. The Romans had their own Master of Shadows, I think, is the name of the space Roman Cleons, right? Go into this region, right? The CIA Baku with the propaganda, with your Syria chemical weapons, your Nair testimony. But the Romans also did that. They go this region, but a lot of times they would do that. They didn't need to lie their own people in the war because they had total control over their people in a lot of other ways. But they would certainly cause disinformation to disrupt to disrupt countries that were not easily subjugated or were starting to pose a threat, to cause violence, to cause wars, to benefit the empire. So that's just something it's really a long it's been a long implemented imperial tactic utilized by places like basically every Western European country. And so anyways, I've gone off on all of these topics. I jumped off in a lot of different directions all at the same time. Whether peace and prosperity, but that's the thing I really wanted to address, is whether peace and prosperity really existed, right? So in the colonial era, because really, when we talk, that's another compartmentalization, is to talk about the colonial era, and then this is one of the Western brain fracturing for the benefit of its tiny oligarchy of Cleons, right? And it's Musk's, right? Who is a clone of his daddy, and he wants his children to all be white Aryan clones of himself, right? That's why he's making 25 kids with all of his executives, right? Men's rights, Elon screams in the darkness of his Tesla when it explodes. Anyways, this is so taking colonialism and going, well, there was colonialism that was not so good maybe, but then there was feudalism inside of that, and there was feudalism, dark age feudalism, and then there was a capitalism, and then we made a progress, right? But then what it leaves out is there's a feudalism, right? Which is, I would argue, like feudalism, imperialism, these systems. Feudalism is when imperial barbarian cultures and lifeways just really fall down on themselves, and all they can do is hurt each other inside of Europe. And then, but the feudalism, when it became capitalism, number one, the Romans already had systems of capitalism in that sense. They had mass wealth center and the benefit of exploited labor for who? The oligarchs who had slaves, right? And who had subjugated entire colonies. They had imperialism, right? That's it. Do you see the waffle brain, which is that there was this Roman time, and then there was a Roman Empire, right? Which did colonialism, which did capitalism, but that's not that. We're not talking about that. No, we're not talking about that. No, that's whataboutism. No. The Romans did capitalism and imperialism. The Europeans did internal colonialism and imperialism. If you look at certain countries exploiting the resources of other neighboring regions in different periods of time, and then the British, right, did colonial imperialism and capitalism and colonialism. Except it was to the whole fucking planet, along with the French, right? So but what the West tells itself is that we had this period of savagery and darkness and feudalism, and then we advanced to capitalism sometime in the as all of the serfs were being displaced and they were moving into the Oliver Twist shithole. Oh, it got so much better. Did it though? Did it though? I mean, was it better? Nobody can get their story straight because number one, nothing really improved. It's the same basic system, but using, but weaponizing more or less of the economic factor, having more access, and getting the oligarchs that have never left. They're always aristocratic Cleons, getting organized enough to get outside of Europe and start re-colonizing, re-imperializing, right? Re-establishing empire as the Romans did, right? But the system between Rome, I would argue between Rome, the entire feudal era, all the way through the colonial era with British, the French, and the Spanish, all the way into the present, nothing has actually fundamentally changed at all about Euro-Western barbarism. It's the same fucking system with slightly different more economic characteristics, more incompetent, right? The feudal era was Roman imperialism becoming incompetent for several hundred years. It was not a fall, I would argue, really. It's not really a fall. Things didn't get bad. And the capitalist system was not an improvement from feudalism, right? Feudalism, you see, right? Capitalism happened, and then there was a slavery, and the slavery was bad, but we figured that out, and now we don't have slavery, except we still do have slavery. Ask all the slaves that the U.S. made in Libya after starting a needless war with more Western media propaganda and Hillary Clinton calling for Gaddafi to be cheering when Gaddafi was sodomized by a bayonet. Does anybody remember this, or do we not study history in the West? Do we study history, or do we what are we doing here? We're not doing anything. There's no such thing as I argue there's no such thing as education in the Western world. There is only incredible intellectual. There is mind imprisonment and training human brains to be fluent bullshit generators. Very good at contorting reality into the most twisted funhouse mirror possible to benefit a handful of people, even hurting the interests of the 99% of people in the Western world, including the white ones, who don't even know why they're bending over backwards to help their own empire that's hurting them. Right? Silver Spook, what are you even talking about? Like, everyone knows Hawaii is a state of the United States. What are you talking about? Do you want to be a state of the United States? Look at the life expectancy of Cuba. They're doing better than you. Why do you keep being subservient to your Cleons? Silver Spook, what are you talking about? If we give Hawaii up, China will take over, and then they'll take over California. Like, what are you talking about? Have you looked up and actually looked into everything that I've said, or are you just spewing bullshit all over the Western English, French, and Spanish-speaking world? Are you just continually contorting all of the facts to fit a completely constructed, fabricated narrative that you were instructed to construct by the school that you went to in the United States, France, Britain, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Germany? Do you even know what you are doing? Do you understand the words coming out of your mouth? Do you understand the words coming out of your mouth? What does civilization mean? What is barbarism? What is actually, what are the actual concrete empirical differences between Rome, between their empire, between Britain, between France, between Spain, between the United States? And I would argue the beginning is in a material analysis of the material conditions, because when you're looking at the exact numbers and the incomes of people and the actual qualities of life, of the amount of food and etc. and the housing rates of these things, right? Which Marx was doing, working for the Empire of Britain, I might add, as a London correspondent for Horace Racist Greeley. New York Tribune, and Marx was just starting to discover, oh my goodness, actually, when you look at the material conditions, this is the system that we're looking at, and this is the actual things have not actually getting better for all of these people, because at the same time, right, Britain is saying, well, this is the greatest thing we've ever had, right? This is the greatest thing we've ever had. The British Empire and its British system of colonialism and capitalism, all of the people The dark peoples of the world are in the places that they need to be, right? The dark races of Africa and China are happy. They're happy to be subservient to us, the capitalist Anglo-Saxon, and the lower, all of Charles Dickens' little children. They were born and bred like the Cleons, and we, the elite of Windsor Palace, we are genetically designed, right, to be the great Queen Elizabeths and the King Charleses. We the King Edwards, right? We oversee the peace and the prosperity, right? And the children of the low, the all of the Romani and all of these fallen peoples, right? They are not capable of governing themselves. The people in North England, right? The Stratford upon Hull, they are just nicking push irons in the 10-foot. All of the chavs in their council housing and violent property. It would be a disastrous calamity if these little ruffians, these little urchins, were to have any say over our holy British Empire. For we, the neo-feudal elite, we, the British colonial elite, we, the feudal elite, we, the capitalist British elite, we, the slave-selling British elite. What are you talking about? That's why I hate this idea. There's a feudalism, and then there's a slavery, and then there's all these systems. The slavery. We deserve our place because we were designed. And if the Irish, if the Black, if the Asian, if these fallen Romani peoples, if we were not, right? If we were not bringing the peace and the prosperity to all of them, this world will fall into chaos and barbarism and dark ages and authoritarian regimes. If we, the British, were to fall after us, the flood of us, it would suggest, right? Because when you say after we, Rome, fall, all of the darkness comes, it suggests that you are not the darkness, right? After the U.S. falls, the dark ages begins. The dark Chinese Russian ages begin. Everything becomes very grayscale, right? Everything becomes like a BBC article dunking on Russia, right? Everything becomes inflamed in dragon flames, like a Washington Post or Reuters article about China. Oh no! And now the darkness becomes, right? Now the barbarians are out because why? Because whatever current Roman is not in charge. But that's always the argument, and that's why I hate that shit. After us comes the flood. You must make black slaves need to be in chains picking that cotton and getting beaten and having their children taken from their parents. Because if slavery were ever to end, if child labor were ever to end in the glass factories of London, if the Asian coolies, right, who are all dying in the fields, growing our sugar cane and our heroin in India and growing all of the land of milk and honey staffed by Chinese and the indigenous Taiwanese people, stolen land. If those people that are doing all of this work were ever to stop doing this horrible starvation, it's very peaceful labor. It's very peaceful when the black people are being whipped in the back. It's very peaceful. If that peace was ever to be broken, well, you might have a Haiti, that would be terrible. What if the slaves caused violence and war, right? Like when the Haitians caused this horrible war and they killed their slave masters. Well, that was just terrible because obviously Haitians don't count as people, right? That's what the British, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, and the Americans, they never want to speak that, which is that like peace only counts when it's peace for rich white men. And so when the Haitians rose up and then killed slave masters, that wasn't very peaceful for the oligarch white dudes, right? When Rome started getting questioned by people going, we don't want to be subjugated by you assholes that keep forcing your language, taking our children, sucking out all of our resources, and making us into your stormtroopers, right? So that wasn't very peaceful right? It wasn't very peaceful when those people came up. And so it's like when Libya started questioning U.S. and Western-led economic colonial hegemony and infinite IMF World Banks, well, that wasn't very peaceful. Gaddafi was very violent when he wanted to give universal healthcare to all of the masses of the population, when he wanted to forgive, or when Gaddafi set up universal healthcare system, when Gaddafi gave women equal rights to men. Oh my God, that was not peaceful. When women demand equality, that is violence against men. That's also very important for the Western world. Oh my God. And Gaddafi also, what did he want? He wanted to give out housing. He gave out free 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom houses to every newlywed couple to start family. So he was destroying the property market that the West was benefiting from. Did you know that the majority, I think 85% of Namibia's real estate is owned by Germans, just as one example. And so Gaddafi was violent towards the United States. Gaddafi was very violent. He was a warmonger. That's why you always look at he's an African military dictator. He was very violent. So unless the U.S. comes in, whenever you hear the West talk about some war happening somewhere that they're really putting on the map, it's probably a war that oftentimes it's the oppressed people who are suffering mass violence, wanting to stop that oppression, right? So that's what peace is. Peace is when the slaves are being enslaved and dying and suffering for empire. And so that's where that's where anyways, that's me, that's me. That's not what the show is saying. I'm using this as a jumping off point for things I want to say about what actual empire and what peace is. And peace and prosperity is it never was, I would argue. Empires build prosperity for a tiny minority. They build peace and prosperity and human quote unquote human rights for a tiny minority of people in their capitals of their capitals. Right? That is what so the justification for continued, by extension, US-led empire is also founded on completely false premises. Why is my computer flipping out right now? Okay, anyways. So, but anyway, let's go back a little to the show before we get to go. John Romero, who is a indigenous person and also a creator of Doom. Let me just see if he's streaming right now. He's making a sequel to Sigil, which is one of my favorite videos. This is kind of an aside. Let me just see if he's streaming right now. So I wanted to go watch that, but I might be ending the stream a little bit earlier. But we're gonna see if I can find that real quick. John Romero is co-founder of id Software, creator of the legendary video game Doom, Quake, Wolfenstein 3D. Is today December 10th? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, it's supposed to be today. I think it's supposed to be like now. But anyways, I shouldn't go to it. But if he is streaming, I might check that out. But anyways, don't go look at that. I shouldn't have stopped. I should have not done that. Now everybody's gonna go watch John Romero making Doom live. I have actually played the entirety of Sigil live on one of these streams. This has nothing to do with what I was talking about. So I'll stop being distracted. Actually, give me one moment, and I'll be right back. And I will give some final comments about Foundation. There's so much more to talk about. I kind of got deep off into one of my, the actual part of what I want to talk about. But I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more after this message. Actually, I want to talk about how the AI integrates into this imperial structure. So give me one moment and check out Neofeud if you have not yet.
The Illuminati created us. They want, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
I had to build my own family. I hate your son. I hate your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
Anyway, so don't forget, everything that we do here is supported by, of course, the continued sales of Neofeud, as well as direct support through Ko-Fi. So consider, if you appreciate the education and or the entertainment value of whatever we do here, consider supporting us through Ko-Fi as well as Patreon. We could always use more support because we're done. I know it's December and it's tight for everybody, but consider supporting us because we do need to get to ideally we get to $1,500 a month, but we're still a third of the way to that, and that will certainly help me to not be freaking out about bills all the time, because it is we're not a wealthy university, educational, or game making organization. We're just some native Hawaiians trying to do land back with a cooperative game development and educational, non-Western empire aligned educational, educational cooperative. Let's say we're not a university yet. We're thinking about Silver Spook University. We still don't have it yet, but if some of you would like to see us continue to do this work, consider what is the Silver Spook streams worth to you, etc. $1, $3, $5 a month, or whatever you can afford. Every bit does help, because if you are a member of an empire, if you are somebody who is of a privileged group, consider supporting us, because there is a lot of terrible things that the U.S. is still doing, including spilling PFAS into our water, including spilling more jet fuel into our water, which is literally killing us as we speak in Hawaii, on top of many other things. So we do need the support to get out from under the current Cleon's thumb as the illegally occupied country of Hawaii. That's actually directly relevant, because I'm always talking about that. So the Silver Spook Cooperative is the foundation, right? Not Harry Seldon. This guy is a clown. This guy is a charlatan. This guy is a COINTELPRO op. That's what that guy is. Silver Spook. Now, obviously, Black Power Media. I mean, actual independent voices doing actual education, right? It's not really about preserving knowledge. It's about actually distributing knowledge for the first time, because there's only disinformation being distributed by the United States and Western countries and their education systems. As I brought up recently, that the school system is where the mind is forged, right? School is where the stormtrooper is created, right? School is where the capitalist U.S. And Western hegemony subject is produced, and then it is reified and reaffirmed and re-solidified after you finish your basic training of American school as a stormtrooper, as a future capitalist cog in a machine, as somebody who believes America has a democracy because you learned that in school. Then it's reaffirmed with all your conversations, your dinner, whether those are around the water cooler, in the office, with your family at Thanksgiving or every night, right? Oh, what do you think about China? Oh, it's authoritarian. Whether it's in your job, in the media, in the entertainment, in the news, everywhere else is just reaffirm what the fundamentals that you learned in school, which is why they banned CRT, critical race theory, and anything left of Joseph Biden, because it's unacceptable. So Empire, and so, in a lot of sense, like you look at a lot of the I was listening to the Black Power media stream the other day. They said like, well, a lot of us when Malcolm X was building, right, when he was working with Islamic, or Black centered school, right? It's like this, not is like Hawaiian school, right? The Hawaiian immersion schools, not all of them, but some of them. It's not just about learning more Hawaiian or learning in Hawaiian language, although that is important, right? So African centered schools, right? It's not a guarantee that it's always going to be, but it's always going to be the best thing. But the history is not being told from a U.S., from an Anglo-Saxon, from a Western, from a white, from a Roman, I would argue, from an imperial, I would argue, perspective. If you want non-imperial people, if you want non-racist, capitalist, colonialist, etc., if you want non-waffle brain, if you want non-goldfish, non-dialectical thinkers, if you want actual dialectical thinkers, right, you need to have, from birth, but certainly from pre-K onwards, routine, regular, basic. You need basic training for socialists. You need basic training for rebels, right? It's really basic training for, in the Star Wars sense, basic training for socialist, anti-imperialist, win-win, multipolar human beings, right? So that's what the Silver Spook, what we do with our kids is we're just trying to make, some kids that are capable of thinking at all. Because if we send them to regular school, like I went to a $20,000 a year private Ivy League feeder school, and it still made me into a goldfish brain stormtrooper, in just incorrect, twisted history to benefit empire and oligarchy. Even though the $20,000 a year Harvard grade high school made me into a fluent bullshitter. So now I just fluent truth say instead of fluent bullshit, like everybody that works for the NED and every Western corporation, government, and NGO does. So it's like you go from fluent bullshitter to fluent truth say. So but it's not just that. It's about so the education system. It's also very important. The British brought schools to India. It's like saying the British brought schools to India is like saying the British brought stormtrooper training facilities to India. Well, how does that help, right? The U.S. built schools in Hawaii. It didn't. It just took over our schools and changed all of our curriculum and got rid of all the actual education and installed Western brainwashing and conditioning, right? So when a Western country builds you a school, that's like growing a tumor. Oh, Elon Musk at some NGO built millions of schools all over Africa. That's like, the U.S. brought millions of tumors all over Africa and Asia. They built you a school. Oh, this U.S. nonprofit philanthropic organization is supporting the education of thousands and thousands of young Taiwanese. Well, that's like thousands of tumors. When the West brings you education, they don't bring you education. They don't bring you education. I know this because I've went through their education system, and then I had to, I had my brain filled with informational tumors, and I had to get chemotherapy. It was called listening to Black and brown indigenous people outside the West, and then actually doing that research and then participating in a non-disinformational echo chamber of imperialism. So the empire, and that's one of the most important ones, is that in order to maintain the empire, it needs to be, if they don't have fear in direct violence, that always comes into it. But one of the, again, as I said, like one of the later, certainly in the last few centuries, certainly since the 1940s, one of the major advantages, and it's mostly not because they want to, but it's because they have to, because of communist, socialist path, non-imperial, multipolar countries, or countries that are on that trajectory, counter-hegemonic, non-Western countries, have forced even more so, right, to have to rely more on mental conditioning, to continue to maintain empire, right? So, as I said, the British were some of the first to do this. Not the first to do this, but they did it better than some of the other Europeans in the colonial era. So like, so that's why it's very important where, like you have to really support those educational, the dual power structures, right? In a Western left analytical structure, the dual power structure, meaning a non-capitalist, non-imperial, etc., non-liberal power structure, and economic power is one of those main ones, means dual educational structures, right? And it's another reason why the Black Panthers had to be destroyed. School lunches, right, that the Black Panthers were giving, that was important. Feeding the people, that's important. But feeding the children's minds, right? Feeding children's minds with something that was not American lies was that was one of the most dangerous things. If a generation of children, right? Mark Milley himself, the United States, the Rand Corporation, the Pentagon themselves have did their own military analysis, and they said if education that teaches the real truth about the United States, they don't say it that way. They say education that causes children to have negative feelings toward the United States, right? Right? With the truth about the United States is a settler, colonial, genocidal, racist project that it's an empire. So I mean, right? If you told the average, normal, ethical human being, which they are, right, the truth about the United States, they'd be like, "Oh my God, that sounds terrible," right? Right? That's why I don't like Star Wars. I don't think Star. Not that I don't like it. I don't think Star Wars really said anything useful, because if Star Wars was honest, it would put American flags all over the Empire, the Death Star, and the Star Destroyers, right? If Americans knew what their country was doing, which was starting 99+% of all the wars, causing all the havoc, maintaining the capitalism that's destroying the planet and the ecology. If the people of the United States knew that they were the Emperor Palpatine, they were the Cleon, they were the wrongdoers, and they were stormtroopers, right? They would hate their own country, and they would want to undo the American empire. The military himself, Mark Milley himself, said we cannot allow. It wasn't General Mark Milley. It was one of the Pentagon top officials that said, if we allow critical race theory, 1619 Project, if we allow for the interrogation of the United States' history and the wars and the slavery and the continued racism, and if we have this idea, if we have that education propagated throughout our public and our school system and all of our school system and our higher education system, this will cause mass collapse of military recruitment. Obviously, if you knew you were joining the stormtroopers to do evil around the planet, which you are when you join the U.S. military, would you join? No, you wouldn't. Why would you want to go and do terrible crimes and kill innocent people for a handful of billionaires' profit? Right? So the U.S. military knows, and by extension, the U.S. military industrial complex, which is the U.S. empire in a lot of ways, it's the major controlling facet of it, right? The military industrial complex knows they must lie to their own people to maintain the U.S. empire, right? So, and that's why it's very important for people to actually get access to that education. I mean, that's how you really know you're being effective. If the U.S. comes and starts trying to destroy your country, like that's how you know Cuba is doing something actually effective against empire, against racism, against capitalism, for the actual benefit of the actual collective good and individual good and environmental good. It's because the U.S. has actually embargoed and tried to crush that country with $130 billion plus worth of lost development and goods due to U.S. maintained embargoes, plus assassination attempts of Castro 700 times. That's how you know you're actually based. You don't know you're based because you say something and somebody likes it on Twitter or Instagram or Mastodon or anywhere else. You know you're based because the U.S. tries to assassinate your leader 700 times. Is trying to actively destroy you. If the U.S. calls you the number one enemy on the face of the planet Earth, it's probably a good, right? The country that has literally propagated all of this horror. If they're calling you the number one face of our number one rival, our number one enemy, there's not a guarantee, but it's a very, very, very strong chance. And you're going to ask yourself, who is that person? It's a very strong chance, right? It's kind of like, who does Emperor Palpatine hate the most, right? Who is Emperor Palpatine, Darth Vader, and all of his Star Destroyers and Stormtroops chasing around the galaxy, right? The rebels, right? In the lore of the Star Wars universe, right? Who is the Emperor trying to chase down? They're trying to stop this foundation. They're trying to stop something that could replace the Empire, right? Now, unless you love the Empire, and obviously there can be, of course, rival empire. That's possible. That's the narrative that the U.S. wants to construct and the Western hegemon wants to construct, is that China is another empire that's going to be just like the United States, except worse because it's Asian. And don't you know, Asians are really terrible, right? That's the norm. That's, anyway, Western anti-Asian racism. So, the reality is that if you look at the concrete evidence on the ground, there is a multipolar world emerging. Like I said, 150 plus countries have already joined the Belt and Road Initiative. Saudi Arabia literally does, which is not necessarily a good country, but that's part of the multipolarity. Is that it is not meddling in countries' internal affairs. It is simply trading and then benefiting, and then maybe suggesting and trying to model things, but not forcing a country to be one way or another way, right? This is that is what makes you imperial, is the force, power projection, unipolarity, meaning there is one way to be. And in the US, like the space galactic empire of Foundation, like the Roman Empire, like the British Empire, and like the French Empire, forced one economic system, one leadership method. The US forces liberalization of economies, forces capitalist systems into countries, forces political change, forces cultural change, forces all these changes, forces Western education into the countries, forces Western subservience to banking and corporate structures, right? And so that is not what China and other countries that work with the Belt and Road, New Silk Road do. I mean, especially China is the most powerful one, the most economically powerful one, but they move by economic win with cooperation and trade. They don't move with they have which is a major point that is not dealt with in the Foundation, because it's inconceived within the West by and large. It's hard to, there's not even really words for this thing. There's not really a word for, like, Xiaokang Xiahui roughly translates to collective moderate prosperity. That's not really a good translation for that. There's words like aloha, kuleana, and pono in Hawaiian, but there's no direct translation for these words because the West doesn't have a history of actual equality. There's these big metaphysical, hypothetical ideas of equality and justice, but there's never been any justice or equality anywhere in the West. There's only been a sequence of racist, capitalist, imperialist empires from Rome all the way to the present. It is unbroken, right? Right. The lie is that, we're gonna subdivide it up into these different sections, but the reality is the West has never had freedom, democracy, equality, and collective prosperity. It has only had very good, horrific oppression and bullshit artists airbrushing their murals around over the dead bodies and all the slavery and all the suffering and environmental destruction and genocide, right? There has only been mass barbarism with some pretty buildings in the capitals, and then mass lying about that, right? And so it's so difficult, right? For even people don't experientially understand what it means to not live in and actually not racist. Not like a Democrat. We're not living in a racist society because I took a knee. Because everybody knows after your political leader takes a knee, after you do your little white fragility conference in your corporation, the corporation it goes go right back to oppressing black and brown people, your racist office, your racist school, your sexist, your fat phobic, your eugenicist, ableist, church. You're right. You know, once people stop their little platitudes, right? That's why the word platitude is a Western word, right? That comes from Plato, because Plato was a fascist imperialist under the Greek Empire, who talked about the perfect Platonic ideal ruler in this high-minded way, and then went around saying, and we the Greeks are the greatest, and if you disagree with Plato, he would literally kill you. Like a fascist would, because the Greeks were fascists. Just like the Spartans in 300. But just like the Romans were, just like they always were, right? So platitude is a word that literally means you're just spouting platitudes, right? Thoughts and prayers. Oh, we are a holy praying country. And the second, we are free and democratic, and we just are so equal, and we just love everyone. We love our children, right? Platitude is a word that means Western, mass, professional airbrushing of omnipresent horror and crime. You don't need to. There's not really a word that means platitude in Chinese. There's not really. You don't talk. You just do. You don't talk one thing and you do another thing. Nobody listens to talk because everybody knows talk is cheap. There's no. They don't need a saying talk is cheap in Chinese. Everybody just knows. We know you by your actions, by the concrete empirical details and the material conditions and the harmony you've created, and that's how you move up in the ranks. In the West, it's all do crime, and then whoever lies the best about it gets to be president. That's why Donald Trump was president, and that's why I locked up 2.5 million black people, and I supported every war that ever came across my desk. Biden became president because it's whoever is the best at pretending that there is any goodness in the most horrible entities that have ever existed. That's all the Western entities, right? Whoever is the best at lying about their own empire gets to be the next emperor, right? It's really who has the best story. Like at the end of Game of Thrones. Oh, you have a really good story. The blind, disabled, altruistic, ultimate, all-seeing raven is going to be the next king because that sounds really good. Not that the racist, capitalist, imperialist, feudal Game of Thrones fantasy version of Europe is gonna be any different under this new story that we're constructing. But it sounds really good, that story you just came up with, right? Who the fuck cares? It's the same goddamn rich white guys running everything. It's the same rich white Starks and Lannisters and Tyrells running everything. But that story about that little blind disabled kid, oh, let me take a picture with my blind disabled black kid. Hi, I'm Nancy Pelosi. Please vote for me. That story sounds, it does numbers among the black and Hispanic and disabled community. And so that's how we get the vote, right? The democracy in the United States is the same as the democracy of feudal Europe and the democracy of Rome. It's like whatever story that we can sell to the masses that there's some kind of good, just country here. And if we run out of that, then we'll just beat your ass up. If you don't agree that there's no racism in the United States, well, all y'all Black Lives Matter can go to prison and you can get run over by the police cars now. By the way, we're spending another, double-digit billions more on the police this year. And we're spending, if you don't agree the United States is a peace-loving, good country, well, you can go die under one of our bombs now. But maybe we can convince you by feeding you a bunch of bullshit. So that's why anyway, I can go off. I have infinite amounts of this to keep saying, so I'm gonna stop because I gotta go watch John Romero and eat lunch. I did want to so that's where like a lot of this comes in. But I do want to say real quick update. Speaking of Empire, because this is this is important. Okay, so a little quick update. I'm trying to find the one about the water. Yeah. So if you did not know, the United States is currently spilling PFAS jet fuel into our water. Sorry, I have so many Twitter posts. I'm always losing my place in my Twitter posts. If you did not know, the United States is currently spilled 1,300 gallons of PFAS into Hawaii's water. It could threaten thousands. It could be thousands of times worse than the Red Hill jet fuel that they've already sickened us Native Hawaiians with. They're trying to prevent any investigation as we speak. So the United States, on November 29th, the Navy announced over 1,100 gallons of toxic firefighting foam had leaked. They've now upped that to 1,300. So they're just constantly lying. Again, the United States military is literally spilling. If one of those gallons, by the way, if one of the gallons of that AFFF, PFAS, forever chemicals, right, were to get in the water of that entire island of 1 million people will be undrinkable for centuries. They are refusing to release the latest footage of the leak. So they're literally, the U.S. military is covering up its crimes. To be clear, the PFAS could already be in the water. So I recommend you cancel your Hawaii vacation, because that stuff, it's drone footage and like basically people flying in planes photographed some of a cleanup that the military was trying to hide, right? Again, controlling the story, right? If you come to Hawaii, you might drink like 100 times beyond the FDA toxic level of PFAS. It's like 5 parts per trillion. That's a amazingly, vanishingly small amount to be in the water. 5 parts per trillion, and then you have cancer cause. You have horrible cancer, lymphoma, all kind of diseases come about. If you come to Hawaii, you might not know it when you're drinking that water in the restaurant, when you're having your Mai Tai in the Hilton Hawaiian Village, or when you're relaxing on that beach having have a glass of water in a restaurant afterwards, right? You might not know it, but you could be drinking 1,000 times more PFAS, in your water every second that you're in Hawaii. So I recommend you cancel that vacation. And I'm not just saying that because the tourist vacation industrial complex is incredibly is an imperial militarism structure that doesn't benefit Native Hawaiians, and in fact commits cultural prostitution and cultural genocide of Hawaiians on our stolen land for the benefit of a handful of rich white owners, while we make starvation wages dancing fake versions of our hula and our sacred dances. Hula is a sacred dance. So, but also you could get sick and die and get terrible cancers. And you already had COVID like how many times? Do you really need to drink forever PFAS chemicals, the most toxic substances, one of the most toxic things in the world? Literally, it's 1,000 times worse than jet fuel in the water, which is already, imagine drinking the little fuel that goes into F-22s, and then imagine something 1,000 times worse than that. Do you want to drink that? I don't think you want to drink that. So, but also, the U.S. military, did you hear about this, by the way? Are you hearing about this in your news? No. The United States continues to harm us Native Hawaiians also by bombing our sacred mountain, Mauna Kea, in preparation for horrific, needless imperial war. Speaking of empire. So, this is the rubber hitting the road, right? This is the rubber hitting the road. Is anybody talking about all the bombs that they're dropping all over Mauna Kea? Right now, the lava is literally hitting Pohakaloa training facility. There is a lava stream hitting the military base, and there are people taking pictures. White people are throwing trash. Tourists are just dumping their waste all over the mountain. What they accuse us Hawaiians of doing on our sacred mountain. This is what the white rich tourists are doing on Mauna Kea. It's all white people. The actual indigenous people and most of the people of color have enough respect to not desecrate the mountain further and like listen to Native Hawaiians like myself, right? But the U.S. military is bombing that mountain, and then there are rich imperial tourists from California clogging up that highway, causing accidents, and just taking as many pictures as possible, further exploiting for their own clout on social media our own environment, right? Giving millions and millions of dollars to our own oppressors that own the entire hotel industry. Somebody asked me, Silver Spook, how can I visit Hawaii without harming Native Hawaiians? The answer is you cannot. Not at this time. You can visit Cuba, right? Because for all the reasons I just said, because every dollar that goes into the tourism industry in Cuba goes straight back into the healthcare and the housing and the education and the material needs of the Cubans, and the tourism is on the terms of the Cubans. That is not exploiting their culture and their language. It's the way that the Cubans actually want to present themselves. You can also go to Urumqi and Xinjiang because the Uyghurs, guess what, are not oppressed and having themselves subjugated. They get to present their own language and their own culture, and they materially benefit from every dollar of visitors that come and spend it in their regions and eat their food, which is their actual food. When you eat food in Hawaii, you're eating Americanized fake Hawaiian food. It's like eating Taco Bell and thinking you went to Mexico. When you eat food, when you visit Hawaiian cultural sites, you're visiting. This is like visiting a Taco Bell and thinking that you've been to Mexico, and you visit a cult. Literally, when you come to a Hawaii, people are like, "But Silver Spook, I've been to Hawaii 25 times. My whole family, yeah." And you've all been brainwashed, and when you come to Hawaii, you get more diseducation than a day of American school, which is a horrific amount of diseducation. You learn all kind of bullshit. You go to the Bishop Museum, it's all full of shit. It's a white capitalist-owned entity. It's all Goldman Sachs operated. When you go to the Polynesian, that's a Mormon. It's like Mitt Romney's Republican-run human zoo. When you come to Hawaii, you are not getting the Hawaiian perspective. You are paying thousands of your dollars to continue the subjugation of Native Hawaiians and erasure of our language and culture while we work in these human zoos to our own starvation wage loss. So, no, you cannot come to Hawaii. Well, you know what you can do is overthrow the U.S. empire. Or I shouldn't say that in a video game because that might be illegal, but no, you can't do that. You have to demand through some very functional processes, push for the U.S. not illegally occupying Hawaii anymore. And when we have control over our economy, like Chinese, the Vietnamese, and the Cubans and their ethnic minorities do, and it benefits us, and it's not literally poisoning us to motherfucking death and erasing our language and culture, which every tourist resort is. I'm so sorry, but that's the case. Then you can come to Hawaii. But as long as the U.S. is bombing us with toxic radioactive waste, literally bombing right next to us, as long as the U.S. is murdering us, the police murder Hawaiians 6 times more per capita. It's even worse than police murder of black people in the United States. The U.S. colonizer police murder 6 times more per capita Pacific Islanders. As long as the U.S. is mass incarcerating Native Hawaiians at a rate 4 times higher than average white person, Hawaiians, similarly, black in mass incarceration by Kamala and Joe, I love my prison Biden, is horrific. Hawaiians are the most, and Pacific Islanders are the most over-incarcerated race. As long as that keeps happening, you are not coming to Hawaii. Or you can come, and then I'm going to give you the middle finger. Because you are Cleoning out. You know what I'm saying? You are empiring out on us over here. So that's what you can do. But no, nobody wants to hear that. They're like, Silver Spook, can I just be a stormtrooper and then vacation on all the dead bodies of all the Ewoks that I killed? That's what you're saying. Ewoks, it's like, imagine a stormtrooper that has just come and invaded Endor and is killing all of the native Ewoks. And then they stormtroopers set up a nice little stormtrooper vacation spot, right? Come to the Ewok Paradise Jungle and have little Ewoks serving Mai Tais to the stormtroopers. Stormtroopers taking off their helmet oh shit, getting some R&R after blowing away all of those Tatooinean rebels. Oh yeah, let's and then imagine Ewoks serving stormtroopers on a beach, right? And then Ewoks, Ewok says, so then the Ewok starts a YouTube channel and the Ewok is like, hey, this empire is really hurting us. Please don't vacation here because we're being paid terribly and everything sucks, and we're gonna get shot if we don't smile. And so don't vacate. Stormtrooper, stop vacationing on Endor. And the stormtrooper goes, but I really want to. And the Ewok says, you know what you can? But imagine even worse. Imagine the liberal progressive stormtrooper going, "Well, I'm a very progressive stormtrooper. Can I Empire stormtrooper vacation on Ewok stolen land in an ethical way?" Just think about that question for a bit. Imagine the Star Wars Empire's murdering stormtroopers, right? Killing a bunch of people, indigenous people of all kind of planets, right? Enslaving and benefit, just like the Foundation series Empire. Imagine the stormtrooper going, "Can I visit Endor ethically? And what can I do to help? What can I, a stormtrooper of the Empire, do to help the Ewoks?" Obviously gonna be like, you can stand against your goddamn motherfucking Empire and don't fucking vacation there. But then Americans don't want to hear that though. So it's a very high quality mental conditioning system. Very high quality because most Americans, they can't even tolerate that. It doesn't even compute in their mind. Anyway, okay, but I gotta go though. So I should probably get up. But if you like this, that is still happening, and of course, real quick, since I brought up all of these things, and so people can be like, "So Spook, you're lying. Hawaii is backwards, just like I learned in American school. Hawaii never had any education system. Hawaiians were all living in huts, right? I'm just waiting for somebody to say that. So because 99.9% of everybody who speaks English is diseducated, so because they went to school in the West. So I gotta find my little thread. So speaking of empire, right? The Hawaii is an ongoing imperial occupation. In case you forgot, for some reason, Hawaii is not part of the United States, but nobody learns that. Many Americans think Hawaiians lived in huts prior to colonization. The U.S. actually deindustrialized Hawaii before 1898, where we already had electricity, mass transit, and railroads. Iolani Palace had electric lights before the White House. Again, this is pre-U.S. Hawaii was a multipolar participant before the United States occupation. Hawaii had a higher literacy rate than any country in the world. 98% literacy rate, with great newspapers, agricultural products, Bibles, textbooks, and other examples of civilized accomplishments were exhibited. The Europeans only had excellent educations for their highborn and their royalty. They still do. Ireland is ahead in literacy, and so the Europeans admitted Hawaii was ahead in literacy, and the so-called enlightened countries of Europe are behind. Hawaii actually invented submarines when Jules Verne was just publishing 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Speaking of science fiction, Hawaii was literally a living Wakanda indigenous future, but also socialist, more technologically, economically, and socio-politically advanced than any Western nation. Hawaii had full citizenship for black people, while the U.S. had slaves. China chained up the Asians to build the railroads in the West. Not China. Canada chained up the Asians to build the railroads in the West Coast. There was no underground railroad that ended in Canada, because ask black people in Canada how not racist Canada is today. The answer is they're treated like second-class citizens still. So actually, Hawaii was where you had full citizenship for African, Asian, and all peoples. Hawaii had the actual democracy with win-win cooperation, not unipolar eradication of cultures, not for oligarchic control, but Hawaiian and Asians both married into each other's families, and there are current names like Akana Akau. Keanu Reeves himself is a descendant of Hawaiian and Chinese worker cooperative Hui system. That's where his grandma is from, and that's why Keanu Reeves he had a close relationship with his grandma, who was from Hawaii. Hawaii's coup, backed by U.S. gunboat diplomacy to smash a non-white country's building of an actual anti-racist, socialist, thriving country, was a blueprint later used on countless Asian, Pacific Islander, Latin American, and African countries. So again, this is the modern day foundation at work. The United States continues to be in violation of international law, including mass diseducating the population, obliterating our history, de-developing our infrastructure, plundering our resources and cheap labor. This homeless tent city is where I worked as a STEM teacher for impoverished Native Hawaiians and AAPI. This region of Hawaii is more economically unequal and impoverished than anywhere in the United States. That includes Camden, New Jersey, Los Angeles, Oakland, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. Hawaii, and this region in particular that I worked in, is the most impoverished, economically unequal, along racial lines as well, with the highest school-to-prison pipeline in the United States, the highest mass incarceration rate, the highest police murder rate, the highest everything, the highest economic inequality. It's literally magnitudes beyond D.C., Los Angeles, and San Francisco in terms of economic inequality. This is literally the worst part of the United States. And it's right under your nose when you vacation in Hawaii. That's what Neofeud is actually about. So, international law, Hawaiians are victims of genocide. But again, the United States doesn't care about committing genocide. It does that all the time. As we speak, children are still punished for speaking Hawaiian in Hawaii in 2022. And we are vastly overrepresented in the military and armed forces because of the mass brainwashing and disinformation, repeating the crimes of the U.S. empire on our neighbors. And so anyways, on other indigenous peoples across the world. And so this, all of this is coming to an end, however, because the multipolar world is being developed, and United States, as the reigning descendant of the Romans and the Cleons of the world, what comes next is not the new empire, right? What comes next is the return to what existed in the majority of the human history, which goes much more than the last 2,000 to 3,000 years. That is a blink in the eye of human history. But that's Western history. It's very small, right? Just like Europe and the white populations of the world. They're very small, but very, very murderous and very brutal. And what comes next is actual win-win cooperative, multipolar, actual civilization, I would argue. And so that's why, but Foundation is very good because what I like most about Foundation is that it's honest about, it doesn't, unlike Star Wars, I think I said it here. Let me see if I got that. Unlike Star Wars, Foundation does not Asianify or Russify. It doesn't Easternize, right, the enemy. It doesn't externalize the enemy, right? Unlike Dune and Star Wars, Foundation doesn't Cold War communist code the empire with everyone marching in gray, like as I said, a BBC article about Russia and China. It doesn't Easternify the leader like Vladimir, right? It Russianifies the enemy in Dune to make it seem like the bad guys are who the U.S. and Western capitalists and imperialists have to fight to save the galaxy. The bad guys are inside the West that is causing its own demise. The colonized that are resisting are also majority non-white. So Foundation is at least honest about that history, where Star Wars is about lying. I would argue Star Wars is lying about the history. Star Wars is telling Americans that are brainwashed imperialists what they want to hear, which is that Russia and China, right? The way that it's encoded, they're not necessarily, there's not a Russian flag and a Chinese flag on the Death Star, but it's encoded in a way that the Americans, what the Cold War propaganda about what communism is, Star Wars is about saying the empire is Russia and China, and we, the white, Han, Luke, and Leia, all white people, we, the white, free-thinking Americans, are the rebels stopping the evil empire, Russia, China, and communism. Whereas Foundation, while it's not directly the United States, but it's as close as you can maybe get with a multi-million-dollar original series, Foundation is saying inside of the West, inside of the great white civilization, inside of our free-thinking places that have senates, inside, well, it's not so free-thinking, but inside of the Western world, in our own history, lies the seeds of our own destruction. We are causing our own demise, right? Now, I go further and I'll go like, I don't think there was any greatness to fall into demise. But at least it's not trying to Vladimirize. It's not Soviet-ifying. It's not, that happens all the time. Even in the peripheral, Russian oligarchs, right? In William Gibson's Peripheral, Russian oligarchs are ruling over digital nanotech and AI post-apocalypse London. It's the Russians, right? Why is it gotta be Russians, right? I'm not saying that everyone in Russia is good, but I mean, do you really want? Are you telling us right now? But what it does is it takes the blame, it takes the heat off of Anglo-Saxon actual imperialism, and then projects it into Russia. When Russian kleptocrats show up and they buy a bunch of politicians, that's when it comes bad. But again, that's one of the downfall. That's one of the negative things. But that's one of the things that I was like, I don't know about that part of the book. But that's just. But the thing is, I'm thinking Gibson himself, William Gibson, is not like, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to make American Western capitalist propaganda. That's just what people write. You know, that's just everywhere, right? So you know, that's the end of the stream. It's 1 o'clock. I gotta go talk to John Romero and say hi. So anyways, thanks everybody for stopping in there. Thanks Big Teal, and thanks Holly for moderating as always. Always good to see our friends. And thanks to Emma, everyone else who was hanging out. I'm sorry I don't read all the chat, but I'll read more of it later on. I might be talking to another African in the UK possibly today or tomorrow. We're gonna see about artificial intelligence. I didn't go much into that, but I did check it out. I had interest. Open AI is imperialist. I'm gonna just straight up say that it does the bidding of empire, like Demerzel from Foundation. Neofeud is a cyberpunk, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, anti-racist game that I created myself. If you like cyberpunk adventure games, cyberpunk, etc., consider checking out this game. It's like Stray, but without a cat protagonist. It's like Disco Elysium, but it is has more cyberpunk characteristics. Consider leaving even a very short review if you enjoyed the game. It is massively appreciated and does help us to continue to make content here at the Silver Spook Cooperative and work on Neofeud too. Also, you can get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows, Mac, and Linux. If you don't have Windows, consider checking out Neofeud there. It's also a game that you can support, given the maximum revenue to us. You can buy Neofeud there, set your own price. And also, you can get the game without having to install Steam. If you like even more hardcore anti-colonial, anti-capitalist, straight-up anti-empire sort of games, Decolonators is a game where you literally kick capitalist colonizer butts out of Vietnam in retro arcade game glory. And it made with actual Vietnamese communist anti-imperialist Luna Oi and myself, a native Hawaiian. So also you can help out. Digital Star is a game where you get an empire, a literal space empire. This is the closest to Foundation, actually. An empire literally arrives on your planet to eradicate and plunder, heal the land and people, prevent the erasure of your language and culture, stop environmental destruction, and confront invaders before it is too late. So this is a story that's directly about today's empire harming and destroying and subjugating Hawaii illegally. And not just illegally, unethically. Also, you can check out Pigeon with Gun, a comedy game where you fight gajillionaire robots, bougie F-16 pilots trying to gentrify with Tomahawk missiles, heart-stealing liberal politicians in the shape of Eldritch Valentine cards and other comedy, but with also always political commentary. Pigeon with Gun. Also, check out Woman, which is a book by my partner, Holly Argent, that is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it is a critique of that culture through a story it's not a historical retelling, but it is about the biblical story, but from Mary's perspective. So consider checking that out, as well as support us through Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud. If you would like to give us ongoing continued support, as I said, it really, every little bit really does help to help us keep on doing this work that we do here. You can follow at Silverspook Games at Octanon.social, at Silverspook Games at Mastodon.social. I have 2 Mastodon accounts. That's how cyberpunk I am. You can also follow Twitter at Silverspook Guy or at Silverspook Games for the game stuff. And you can also follow Silverspook on Instagram, Silverspook Games on Facebook. And also don't forget you can follow Holly. Oh, don't forget to give the stream a like and a thumbs up and all that fun stuff. Holly is the mod, voice actor, and partner at Silverspook Games, producer, writer, and mod for the Lullaby Lounge, also known as Kate Nix's show. That is going to have its first a new event happening very soon in the 20th, in 10 days. Holly is also the writer, educator, primary parent, and caregiver, and an administrator here at the Silverspook Cooperative, and is also So do follow Holly. I was forgetting something. Also, you can follow at Terminus C. Terminus Cyberstar is another Silverspook game, low poly cyberpunk immersive sim in the vein of late 90s games like Deus Ex and System Shock. It is a game that is nearly complete with the exception of the art optimization and content testing stuff. So consider checking out this game, in Terminus Cyberstar. It is a game that I am the lead writer and director of. So it definitely has the Silver Spook edge to it. And yeah, so yeah, you can join the Discord as well. And I think that's it. Okay. Trying to rush out the window. Anyways, so thanks again to all these people on this list for your continued support. It does massively help us to do the work that we're doing. Thanks so much to all of our Patreon patrons and everybody for watching. And we're gonna go check out John Romero's stream, and I'm just gonna say hi, and I gotta go eat lunch. And we'll be back in the evening. I may be talking to if anybody knows Saber, I think maybe today or tomorrow. He is a black person in the UK, and we very into cyberpunk and sci-fi, and he has his own video channel which talks about some of those topics and Pan-Africanism and anti-imperialism and anti-colonialism from a black person in the UK perspective. So you might have seen Saber on some of the Silver Spook streams and events. So one of these days soon, we're going to have a little chat about AI and stuff, because Saber also works in programming and high-tech stuff. I do as well. So that should be fun. That should be a lot of fun. So come back at 8 p.m. Pacific.